I thought my parents had my back, until I found out they used my entire college tuition to throw my sister a lavish wedding. My future? Stolen. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Lila, and I had been saving for months, working part-time, and counting every dollar to make sure my first semester went smoothly. I never imagined my parents would betray me. Just weeks before college began, I overheard a conversation about Tessa's wedding, an extravagant, expensive event with everything from a fancy hall to professional photographers. My heart sank when I realized they had used the money I had been saving for my tuition. I confronted them immediately. "How could you do this?" I asked, voice shaking. Their answer cut even deeper. "It's family priorities," my mom said, like my dreams were unimportant. I felt crushed. The panic, anger, and helplessness hit me all at once. My college, my independence, my plans, they were all jeopardized because of their choices. I sat in my room, staring at the acceptance letter I couldn't afford anymore. I wanted to scream, cry, and run away all at once. I felt betrayed, but I also realized something important: I couldn't let their selfishness control my life. Somehow, I had to find a way forward. Somehow, I had to turn this betrayal into my strength. It was the kind of heartbreak that burns, but also awakens a fire inside. I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't going to let them win. After the shock of discovering my tuition was gone, I knew I had to confront my parents. I walked into the living room, my hands trembling. "I need to know why you spent my college money on Tessa's wedding," I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. My mom sighed and exchanged a quick look with my dad. "Lila, family comes first," she said calmly. "We'll figure out another way for your college. Don't worry so much." I felt my stomach twist. Another way? "Mom, this isn't just money. It's my future," I said, my voice cracking. Their expressions didn't change. They sounded certain, even proud, like they had done the right thing. For hours, I sat in my room, thinking. I kept replaying their words: family comes first. Did my dreams not matter at all? I felt dismissed, like my hard work and sacrifice didn't even register. The house felt smaller, heavier, and I realized I couldn't depend on them to fix this. The panic started to settle in. College was weeks away. I had no money, no plan, and my parents were acting as if everything was fine. My mind raced through possibilities: part-time jobs, scholarships, emergency loans, but each option felt like a mountain I had to climb alone. It hurt deeply that they couldn't see my perspective. Their selfishness was clear, but beneath the anger, I sensed a growing determination in myself. If they wouldn't help me, I had to help myself. I couldn't let their priorities decide my life. That day, I realized survival meant independence, and independence meant I would need to fight harder than I ever had before. For the first time, I understood that their choices didn't define me, my actions would. The first day of college arrived with excitement, but it didn't take long for reality to hit me like a punch. At the financial office, I was handed a notice: my tuition hadn't been paid. My heart sank, and a cold dread ran through me. How could this happen? Soon after, the office called my parents. I overheard them speaking in hurried, nervous tones, their usual confident voices replaced with tension and embarrassment. My dad's hand shook slightly as he explained, while my mom's face turned red with panic. For the first time, I saw them vulnerable, like the people who had controlled my life were suddenly powerless. Watching them scramble made something stir inside me. Anger mixed with clarity. I realized this wasn't just a financial problem, it was an opportunity. Their mistake had given me the chance to show them I wasn't helpless, that their control over me had limits. That evening, I sat quietly in my room, thinking through every possibility. I wouldn't lash out or make a scene, I didn't need to. My revenge wouldn't come from hurting them, it would come from proving I could stand on my own 2 feet. Scholarships, part-time jobs, grants, I started listing every option, feeling a strange sense of empowerment alongside the fear. For the first time, I understood that strength wasn't about confrontation or anger. It was about resilience, independence, and quietly rising above the people who had betrayed me. Their panic and embarrassment weren't victories, but they were reminders that I held the real power now, my determination, my choices, and my future. And in that moment, I made a promise to myself: I would succeed on my terms, and they would have no part in it. The first night in my dorm, I felt lost and overwhelmed. Bags unpacked, paperwork scattered, and no tuition paid. I didn't know where to start. That's when I met Noel, my roommate. He noticed my frustration and offered a quiet, genuine smile. "Hey, want to figure this out together?" he asked. At first, I hesitated. I had never shared my struggles with anyone outside my family, but something about Noel made it easy. We sat at our tiny desk, papers and laptops open, and started brainstorming solutions. Part-time jobs, scholarships, emergency grants, each idea seemed more realistic with his encouragement. Noel didn't judge me, didn't make me feel small for my parents' mistakes. He simply helped me focus on what I could control. For the first time since discovering the betrayal, I felt a spark of hope. Step by step, I saw a path forward. The more we planned, the stronger I felt. I realized that independence wasn't just about money, it was about finding allies, trusting myself, and taking action even when others had failed me. Noel's support reminded me that strength could come from unexpected places, and I began to believe in my own abilities. In those quiet nights filled with lists, applications, and research, I also started to feel something else, a quiet determination. My parents thought I couldn't manage without their help, but I was learning I could do more than survive, I could thrive. Their selfishness had pushed me to discover my own strength, and I knew one day, my success would speak louder than any argument or apology. That night, as I closed my laptop, I smiled faintly. For the first time, I felt ready to prove that I was capable of more than they had ever imagined. While juggling part-time work and scholarship applications, I found a notice for a prestigious summer research internship. It promised experience, mentorship, and a stipend. I knew it was competitive, but something inside me sparked. I had to prove that I could achieve something big on my own. I told my parents about it casually, expecting at least a little encouragement. Instead, they laughed. "Lila, that's way too much for you. You can't handle it without us," my dad said dismissively. My mom gave a faint, awkward smile, clearly agreeing but avoiding confrontation. Their doubt stung, but it didn't break me, it fueled me. I stayed up late writing my application, carefully crafting essays, highlighting my achievements, and explaining my goals. Every word felt like a small act of defiance. I didn't need to confront them directly, my determination was already my message. Submitting the application felt like a victory in itself. I imagined their smug faces if I actually got accepted. I knew I couldn't rely on them financially or emotionally, but that didn't matter anymore. My drive, focus, and effort were enough to shape my own future. Even as I carried on with my daily responsibilities, a sense of quiet satisfaction grew inside me. I was taking control, not by fighting or arguing, but by building something they couldn't take away or dismiss. Every scholarship form, every work shift, every application was a step toward showing them that their judgment and their money were irrelevant to my success. For the first time, I realized revenge wasn't about confrontation. It was about outshining their expectations quietly, consistently, and powerfully. And this internship was the first step toward that goal, a proof that I could thrive without their approval or support. Weeks later, I received the news: I had been accepted into the summer research internship. I couldn't believe it at first. All the late nights, stressful applications, and juggling work had paid off. Excitement mixed with a quiet sense of triumph. I had done this without any help from my parents. The internship was challenging from the start. The professors expected precision, creativity, and dedication. I threw myself into every task, learning quickly and contributing meaningfully. I discovered strengths I hadn't realized I had: attention to detail, problem solving, and the confidence to speak up in discussions. I also met mentors who genuinely cared about my growth. They offered guidance, advice, and encouragement, and I soaked it in like a sponge. Their recognition didn't just validate my skills, it reminded me that success could be achieved independently, and that genuine support existed outside my family. I could feel the shift at home without even asking. My parents began hearing whispers from distant relatives, family friends, and neighbors about my achievement. I caught glimpses of them exchanging worried looks when my success was mentioned. The control they thought they had over me was slipping, and they couldn't do anything to stop it. Through it all, I stayed polite when talking to them, careful not to gloat or provoke. Yet inside, I felt a quiet satisfaction. This was my revenge, demonstrating my independence and proving my abilities while they scrambled to regain some sense of authority. My accomplishments spoke louder than any argument, apology, or explanation. For the first time, I realized that revenge didn't need confrontation. It could be subtle, powerful, and undeniable. Every task I excelled at, every compliment I earned, was a piece of my plan, showing them that my life was moving forward, on my terms, with or without their support. A few weeks into the semester, my phone kept buzzing with calls from home. My parents wanted updates, every few days, about my finances, my classes, and whether I was keeping up. The tone was frantic, almost desperate, as if their world depended on my failure. I answered each call with calm confidence. "I'm doing fine, Mom. I've got everything under control," I said, careful to sound collected. "Don't worry about tuition. I can handle it." My dad's voice cracked slightly when I mentioned I was covering expenses through my scholarship and work. I could almost hear the panic rising on the other end. For months, they had acted as if my college depended solely on them, and now, seeing me thrive independently, their carefully built authority was slipping. Each question they asked, each worried comment they made, only reminded me of how powerless they were over my life now. It gave me a strange, quiet satisfaction. I wasn't bragging, and I didn't need to. My progress and success were the proof, and it was enough that they could feel the weight of their earlier choices. Their panic was subtle revenge, unfolding naturally without me doing anything overt. As the calls continued, I realized how much had changed in just a few weeks. I wasn't just surviving, I was excelling. Their frantic tone contrasted sharply with my calm confidence. Every time they called, I was reminded that my independence was more than financial, it was emotional and intellectual. By the end of one particularly tense conversation, I hung up and smiled. I was thriving on my own, and their unease was a quiet but satisfying consequence of their selfish decisions. Months after the wedding, whispers of trouble reached me. Tess, who had been so carefree during her lavish celebration, was now drowning in debt. The extravagant hall, designer dress, and expensive catering had left her with bills she couldn't manage. I heard her arguing over phone calls with lenders and trying to figure out how to cover expenses she had never considered. I felt a mix of emotions, surprise, a twinge of satisfaction, and a quiet sadness. Part of me knew she had been blinded by the grandeur, but part of me understood that life had a way of teaching lessons on its own. I made a conscious choice not to step in. This was not my responsibility, and I needed to let her face the reality she had created. Seeing her struggle from a distance, I felt a subtle sense of justice. My parents had prioritized her wedding over my future, and now she was learning the cost of choices made without foresight. I didn't feel joy in her hardship, but I felt a quiet reassurance that fairness sometimes unfolded naturally, without interference. While she scrambled to make payments, I continued with my own life, my studies, internship, and part-time work, growing stronger, more independent, and more capable every day. The contrast between her struggles and my progress was stark, and it reinforced the lesson I had quietly been proving all along: selfishness has consequences, and responsibility cannot be ignored. For the first time, I realized that revenge didn't require confrontation, anger, or words. Watching karma do its work, while I built my own life steadily, was more powerful than any argument could ever be. It was quiet, undeniable, and deeply satisfying. By the middle of the semester, I had saved enough from my work and internship to move into my own apartment. It wasn't huge or fancy, but it was mine. I picked out furniture, organized my space, and decorated it with things that reflected who I was. Every item, every corner, felt like a small victory, a testament to what I had built without anyone else's help. Friends noticed the change immediately. They admired my determination and often commented on how well I was managing on my own. Their encouragement made me feel proud, but also reinforced that I didn't need my parents' approval or control to succeed. I had created a life that was fully mine. Meanwhile, my parents' influence seemed to shrink. They called less often, sometimes asking about small details I barely needed to share. I sensed a quiet frustration. They were used to being at the center of every decision, every success, and now I was thriving without them. Their absence in my achievements didn't hurt, it only made me appreciate the autonomy I had worked so hard to achieve. For the first time, I experienced true peace. I could focus on my studies, work, and personal growth without family arguments, guilt trips, or manipulation looming over me. The freedom was intoxicating, and it allowed me to make decisions confidently, knowing they were entirely mine. Living independently gave me a sense of control I had never felt before. Each day, I woke up knowing I had earned my life with my own effort, and that knowledge was more satisfying than any approval or praise from those who had once dismissed me. For the first time, I was not just surviving, I was thriving on my own terms. Near the end of the summer, I received an email that made my heart race. I had been awarded a prestigious scholarship in recognition of my work at the internship. All the late nights, research projects, and careful planning had not only paid off, they had propelled me into an opportunity one hadn't imagined possible. When I mentioned it casually to my parents over the phone, I noticed the hesitation in their voices. My mom stammered, we didn't expect this," while my dad stayed silent, clearly taken aback. For the first time, I sensed a shift. The confidence they once held over me was gone, replaced by surprise, worry, and a faint trace of guilt. I didn't gloat or relish their discomfort, but I felt a quiet satisfaction. Their earlier decision to prioritize Tessa's wedding over my tuition had cost them more than they realized. Instead of holding me back, it had sparked a determination that led to a success they couldn't influence or control. The scholarship wasn't just financial aid, it was proof of my independence, resilience, and ability to thrive despite their mistakes. Every professor who praised my work, every mentor who recommended me, was a reminder that my efforts mattered far more than their approval ever could. I realized that my revenge wasn't about confrontation or anger. It was in the undeniable results of my hard work. My parents had acted selfishly, thinking they could control my future, and the consequences of that choice were clear. I had flourished on my own, and they were powerless to stop it. In that moment, I felt a mix of pride, relief, and quiet triumph. Their greed hadn't just failed me, it had set the stage for me to rise higher than they ever imagined. A few weeks after the scholarship announcement, my parents asked to meet. Their voices were quiet, hesitant, almost unfamiliar. "Lila, we're truly sorry for using your tuition money," my mom said, eyes downcast. My dad nodded, avoiding my gaze. I listened carefully, taking in their words without interrupting. The apology was sincere, or at least they sounded sincere, but I knew that forgiveness wasn't automatic. My trust had been broken, and I had learned firsthand what selfish choices could do to someone's life. "I appreciate your apology," I said calmly. "But that doesn't mean everything is okay. I need time, and I need you to understand that your decisions had serious consequences." I kept my tone steady, controlled, and firm. I wasn't angry anymore, not in the wild, impulsive way, but I wasn't willing to hand over my trust lightly. Sitting there, I realized how much strength I had gained from the entire experience. I could acknowledge their remorse without letting it rewrite the past or manipulate my feelings. I was in control of the narrative now, my story, my choices, my life. For the first time, I didn't feel like a child seeking approval or validation. I was an adult, capable of setting boundaries and enforcing them with confidence. My parents' apology didn't change my independence, if anything, it reinforced it. They had acted selfishly, and now I could observe the consequences without losing my calm or focus. By the end of the conversation, I felt a quiet power. I had heard their words, accepted responsibility for my own feelings, and maintained control over the situation. Forgiveness would come slowly, if at all, but my independence and emotional strength were already unshakable. One afternoon, Tess came by my apartment, looking nervous and exhausted. The carefree attitude she had during her wedding was gone, replaced with quiet regret. "Lila, I didn't realize what my wedding cost you," she said softly. "I'm sorry. Can we start over?" I studied her carefully. Part of me wanted to lash out, to remind her of all the trouble her choices had caused, but I didn't. Instead, I took a deep breath. "I forgive you, Tess," I said gently. "But I don't forget. You need to understand the consequences of your actions." Her eyes filled with tears. She finally seemed to grasp the weight of what her lavish desires had created, not just for herself, but for me. She had relied on others without thinking, expecting everything to be easy. Now, she faced the results, and the lesson was unavoidable. As she spoke, I felt a sense of calm and quiet justice. I had allowed life to teach her what I couldn't force her to learn. Her realization was real and earned, not handed to her by lectures or anger. Watching her acknowledge her mistakes without intervention felt like subtle revenge, not through cruelty, but through fairness and natural consequences. That day, I also reinforced my boundaries. I made it clear that while I cared about her, I wouldn't be manipulated or taken advantage of again. She nodded, understanding for the first time that my independence was not negotiable. For the first time in years, I felt fully respected within my family. I could care for them without compromising my own life. Tess had learned her lesson, and I had learned something too. Sometimes, the most powerful revenge is simply living well, setting boundaries, and letting others face the outcomes of their choices. The day of my graduation arrived, and I walked across the stage feeling lighter than I ever had. I had earned my degree with honors, debt-free, and entirely on my own. Every late night, every challenge, every obstacle I had faced without my parents' support had led me to this moment. In the audience, my parents sat quietly, their faces betraying a mix of pride, regret, and helplessness. They realized the choices they had made years ago had put me in difficult situations, yet their earlier actions couldn't be undone. There was no lecture, no apology that could rewrite the past. They had lost the chance to control me, and I had won my freedom. As I accepted my diploma, I felt an overwhelming sense of triumph, not the kind born from revenge or anger, but the quiet satisfaction of thriving despite betrayal. My success wasn't about hurting them or proving them wrong directly, it was about living fully and proving, through action rather than words, that their selfishness could not hold me back. Walking out into the sunshine after the ceremony, I reflected on everything I had endured. I had faced disappointment, betrayal, and uncertainty, yet I had built a life of independence, financial security, and personal strength. I had learned to set boundaries, to stand firm, and to trust in my own abilities. This was my ultimate victory. The lesson was clear: revenge doesn't require cruelty. The most powerful form of justice is simply living well, thriving on your own terms, and letting the consequences of others' choices unfold naturally. For the first time, I felt complete peace. I had created a life I could be proud of, and nothing, not guilt, not manipulation, not past mistakes, could take that away. I was free, strong, and truly unstoppable. Do you think I did the right thing by standing my ground and proving myself, or should I have trusted them again? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.